We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. I'm excited about our guest today. We've been trying to make this happen, but for whatever reason, she slipped out of my hands like a noodle. I don't know where I get this reference from. It's really weird. Like every time I go, and I'm like, what the freaking heck happened? So I just found out her name is Infidel Noodle. Welcome to Myth Vision.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I feel very honored.
It's okay. Let's hope you stay and it doesn't, you don't slip out of this interview. No, seriously. She's also dealing with a cough right now. And so bear with her as we enjoy this talk and learn from you about your experience. I want to say up front, I'm an ex-Christian. I'm someone who was a Christian. I still sympathize and have empathy. My mother's a Christian. My father is. Most of my family are Christians. And I respect it. Like, I understand. For them, it's like a cultural thing and it's a comfort to them. But at the end of the day, I'm like, no. And there's some harmful thoughts. They damage themselves looking at themselves as less than, and they need this to be something, and they're worried about hell and all this stuff. I'm sure you hear about the same things in your worldview that you came out of. But I want to say the reason I always invite people who are X this and X that is because they relate to me. Like, I have something in common with you. So for those who are believers who come from the worldview, whatever it might be, and for you, it's Islam, who are going, why aren't you inviting Muslims on? I don't understand it. And trust me, there will be conversations. And maybe we'll open up the forum today to have friendly conversations with one at a time. Very limited, though, on time because I know your voice. But I wanted to say, I'm inviting people on a skeptic channel that I have in common with. We share something here. And so we speak the same language. With that being said, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was your experience in the past? And then what was the turning point? Sure, it was gradual, probably. What made you leave? So we don't know anything about you.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I don't even know where to start. So I guess I'll just begin with my background a little bit. So I was born into a Sunni Muslim family. My whole family is quite conservative Muslims. We come from a very small community in South Africa called Cape Malay Muslims. So Cape Town is where Islam is supposedly was first kind of introduced to the South African region. So I've, totally betrayed my ancestors or whatever by becoming an infidel and doing all of this sort of stuff, but that's okay.
You probably betrayed your ancestors before that from their previous religions, previous to those. Yeah, we all have betrayed. Yeah.
Definitely. But that's okay, because people like you and I, can sort of carve out the path for new ways of understanding the world and new ways of being. So it's kind of cool in a way. In terms of my upbringing, I actually grew up in the West. A lot of people kind of assume, that because I do what I do, I must have come from some really harsh Muslim country and I'm just really angry at the world or whatever. But that's not the case. I did grow up in Australia. So I was very lucky, even though there were so many aspects of my life that were being controlled by Islam. Ultimately, I had the privilege of living in a secular Western country. So, it was very different for me in comparison to ex-Muslims who are still living in places like Saudi Arabia, in sort of North African countries. You asked about turning points, Derek. I never know how to answer this.
Maybe I can help. So I'll give you my personal and then not spend a lot of time on it to make the point. For me, Jesus was the only way. For you, Muhammad was the true and final prophet, and Jesus was not a son of God. Jesus did not get crucified, right? I was more into the theological and getting into like how to understand the Bible, debates between Christians on free will and determinism and all this stuff. And what happened to me with that worldview in mind, that this is the only way, I saw other religions. This is my own personal conversion, so to speak, or deconversion. I saw other religions and I said, there's a lot of patterns here, like very similar motifs. Jesus dying and rising and the miraculous claims and things were not unique. They were all throughout the ancient world. What made this? It was just a small little chip in my armor where that arrow hit. Why do you, Derek, think this is the only one? And sure, Christians will do that and be dead serious, yelling at a Muslim, let's say, and then they believe they're right and the Muslim's wrong. Well, guess what? From your worldview, it was the same thing. Was there anything specific in your worldview that started to make that key, that little hole, and that arrow hit it? What are the things that started to cause doubt?
Look, I think from a young age, it really was questions around morality. So, for example, you know that Prophet Muhammad, he married a young girl when she was 6 years old, and I think even when you're a child, even when you're a 6-year-old, you can sort of say, well, that's a bit weird. I don't want to marry a 50-year-old man at this age. That's a bit gross. And then I think that was kind of where things started. I think especially growing up as a Muslim woman, you can really quite easily identify those inconsistencies between what you're given in comparison to, let's say, your brother or your father, So that was something that I was just kind of, I always queried it. It never felt fair to me that those freedoms that my brother was granted, just because I was, born with a vagina, I'm not allowed to, travel without what they call a mahram, sort of like a male guardian, that sort of thing. And I think it just kind of snowballed from there, really. And really, the tipping point where I absolutely knew that this wasn't, the one true religion like I believed for so many years, just like you probably did for Christianity, was when I realized that the science didn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's just something that, morality, it can be a bit of a gray area, but with science, when you actually look at the evidence, that's when you realize, okay, this is a little bit more black and white than I thought. These Quranic miracles and what have you, they don't exist. And then I think that's when I finally accepted that I didn't believe in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For me, I didn't have a problem with, I found ways, if you will, cognitive dissonance, to ignore, kill every man, woman, and child and leave no one alive, God's commands in the Old Testament. Like, I was able to somehow go, well, God's right no matter what. If we start with that, whatever reason he had was just. I never took into account of, I'm going to see if I'm more moral than God. And I think one day I realized, when I looked at my own family members that were living a lifestyle that I knew, according to my worldview, they were going to cook in hell by a loving God forever and ever. And I said, I love them more than God loves them. If they're not God's chosen, then how is it possible I could love, if God is love, them more than God? Because Jacob I loved, Esau I hated, quoting Bible verses. So God had to hate some people. And how could I love them more than God? And that started to make me, like, I know it sounds crazy, but I was like, am I more moral than God? And it sounds to me you're way more moral than the prophet you were following.
I really hope so. It's interesting, there's really, I guess, basic philosophical questions that you're sort of bringing up there. That was a really big part of my journey as well. So when I was in university, I took a couple of philosophy classes, and I actually, for an assignment, I had to argue for the existence of God. And that was a point where I was just like, wow, I am writing the worst essay right now. I really don't even know how to approach this. This is terrible. And yeah, I mean, bringing it back to Muhammad's morality, I mean, there's just so much there that I think even growing up, a lot of the stuff, especially within the Hadith, I was completely unaware of. Like, I didn't realize as a child that sex slavery is permitted in Islam, stuff like that. That was stuff I learnt right in the lead up to when I was leaving. When, I don't know if you went through this, but you go through like a heavy research phase where you're kind of, well, for me, I was kind of trying to convince myself, if you just research it, it'll prove to you that all your doubts are, silly, and this is the one true religion. And then turns out it did the total opposite, and I ended up leaving.
That's a really good point. I never really thought about sex slavery, and it is a biblical thing, by the way. Concubines, and obviously reserve the virgins for yourself. It's like, whoa, dude. Yeah, no thanks. That would go against what we would do today. Even today, we don't have policies in America in warfare for those type of things. Not saying some soldiers don't do things that they shouldn't, but according to what we would be allowed to do as warriors that go into battle during warfare, that's not something that's okay, even in the worst of situations like war. So, all right, we got off topic just a smidge into some of the little weeds. When you deconverted, how did your family take it? Like, what happened? Did you keep it to yourself for many years? Like, was it a slow where your confidence built up to be able to say some things? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the whole situation with my family was probably the most difficult part of my journey. So, for a lot of Muslim families, I mean, I'd go so far as to say the majority of Muslim families, there is no, ex-Muslim auntie or ex-Muslim sister or whatever. If you leave Islam, you're not part of that family anymore. You are the worst of people. That is like the worst thing you could possibly do. And I was very aware of that as I was deconverting. I was quite young. I still lived at home with my parents. And so for a very long time, I did kind of maintain this double life where I had to pretend to pray and I had to pretend that I was fasting and all of that sort of stuff. And that was really, really hard. And it was only when I reached complete financial independence, I had my own house, I had, everything I needed to survive. That's when I kind of decided that I was ready to be open and honest with them. Because it wasn't that I wanted to lie, it was just that I didn't want to lose my family. And unfortunately, that was what ended up happening with my parents. But I'm very lucky because I still have a Muslim sister who, that it didn't affect our relationship at all. She didn't care. And my brother actually ended up leaving Islam too. So we're pretty close now. So that was great. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I would love to one day meet your brother, honestly. I mean, like, this is the stuff that inspires me. It's sad. It's sad that you would wish that was a barrier you could cross, but it just can't happen. Like, it is a sad thing that's the kind of thing cults do, is prevent you from being able to do that. Robert Mahaney, you always come through, man. Seriously. Thank you for the super chat, bro. I seriously appreciate that. Always keeping the lights on here at Myth Vision. Goes a long way. And you never have a question. You're so easy. You're so easy. I love you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We've got Abdullah Samir in the chat. Everybody go subscribe to Abdullah Samir. His new channel is the Friendly Ex-Muslim. Definitely go check out my boy's stuff. And also, you're going to look in the description. You need to subscribe to her channel. We rushed to jump on this. And I didn't even mention that up front. So what is some of can you talk about some of the drama that's going on right now? And what do you experience as an ex-Muslim online?
Oh my gosh. A lot of unexpected backlash. And I say unexpected because I just never realized that even before I really criticized Islam or said anything about Islam online, it was more I was talking about my own personal journey, just being open about the fact that I am an ex-Muslim. And even that was too much for a lot of people to handle. Especially Muslim men. They don't like it when Muslim women leave Islam. So I think it took maybe 2 or 3 months of me being kind of active on social media before I started getting death threats, rape threats, people doxing me, finding my name, finding, where I live. At one point, I had this stalker living in Egypt who he would create about like 20 to 30 fake accounts every single day. Like, I'm not exaggerating, every single day with my profile picture. He would upload the most disgusting stuff about me and stalk me on every platform. It was really intense. So yeah, there's a lot of drama involved with being an ex-Muslim in a public space online.
That is ridiculous, by the way. You're nuts. Whoever you are, you're absolutely stupid and crazy, and just stop the BS, okay? I'm calling them out. Cowboy 1000, thank you for the super chat. Who were some of the most influential authors in your deconversion from Islam? Do you have any?
Yeah. This is really cliche, and I'm always a little bit embarrassed to say this, but Richard Dawkins was actually really influential in the early part of my journey. And I think that was because I had just never been exposed to anyone discussing the kind of things that he was bringing to light. I'd never thought about that sort of stuff before. So he was pretty important. But then in terms of ex-Muslims themselves, Maryam Namazi, she created a documentary about people who left Islam. And that was something that made me realize that ex-Muslims exist in the first place, that there is such a thing as an ex-Muslim. And Yasmin Mohammed, she's written a book about her, just her personal journey. And that had a big impact, because just to hear someone be so raw and so honest about what the experience is like, it takes a lot of guts, because as soon as you put out anything about your personal journey, the emotions you went through, the first thing Muslims are going to say is, oh, look, you just left Islam for emotional reasons. You just had a bad upbringing. You don't actually know anything about Islam. So that's seeing her being so brave and outspoken about that. That was really big for me as well. So yeah, there's been a few, definitely.
Question. We're going to go ahead and get the elephant in the room. Why the mask?
Okay, so Derek mentioned at the beginning that I'm sick. That's not why I'm wearing a mask, guys. I'm not an idiot. I know that I can't pass my sickness on to Derek through the computer. So like I said before, there's a lot of drama involved with being an ex-Muslim online. So I chose to partially protect my identity for that reason. Surprisingly, it actually worked. Like, no one has found my face so far, which is great, because that means they can't use things like facial recognition technology to stalk me and find my actual personal social media accounts and whatever. So yeah, that's why I cover my face.
Good. Simple as that. No, I had I didn't have many people make that kind of comment until a female comes on with a mask. But when we had Apostate Aladdin, that wasn't a problem. It was a guy. But I guess when a girl does it, it's something different. I don't know. Your family, obviously, we talked about this. Now, what is your goal with what you're doing online? Like, have you had tons of people reach out and say that what you've done has helped them? I mean, like, tell us a little bit about that. What is your goal with what you're doing?
Look, I think a lot of people assume that my goal is to like destroy Islam or tear down Islam or whatever. Look, I don't care. If you believe in Islam and you're not hurting anyone or forcing your beliefs onto someone else, you can believe in Islam. I promise you, I do not care. What I do care about is ex-Muslims and the horrible, isolating experiences that they go through. So by speaking openly about my thoughts on the religion and just, trying to have a sort of open and honest dialogue online with my content, the people I'm actually trying to reach are ex-Muslims or doubting Muslims who maybe they've never been exposed to anyone talking about this kind of stuff before. I was that person for a very long time, and I know how lonely that can feel. So that's who I'm trying to reach through my platforms.
Wow, well put. You're not going to convince someone who's staunch and all into their religion. Like, it'd be awesome to have everybody kind of find a way to taper down. But I do a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witness material, ex-Mormon material, ex-Scientology material, and I don't get any of the backlash that I see from the ex-Muslim world on this, right? Like from the Muslim world that towards ex-Muslims. But at the same time, one of the biggest issues we deal with, for example, with the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, is the family dynamics and how an apostate is treated. And we're talking about a fringe version of Christianity, right? Like, you're thinking, nah, this stuff's had plenty of time to evolve, and they still are dealing with this in America, Australia. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Like, it's intense all over the world right now with the Jehovah's Witness stuff. Here we have the same thing going on in Islam as well as in other religions. So I just figure I'd point that out for everybody. Lots of people, they act like there's no such thing. Why do you call yourself ex, is Muslim, this, that? And it's something that was on Abdullah's channel the other day. And I was saying, I know tons of ex-Christians, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-everything, just addressing that. Is it okay with you if I were to open up the room for maybe one or two ex-Muslims to have, or not ex-Muslims, sorry, Muslims that would be interested in asking you questions and being kind and polite? Because I have found, and you might actually be shocked by this. You probably don't find this often. The people that are Muslims that have come on and talked, you might say they're deluded, they're mistaken, whatever, but they have been fairly good at treating my guest kind. And they're setting an example. So far, I've had a pretty good example set on the channel where it's been pretty respectful and it hasn't been like some of the stuff you see out there. So would you be interested in that?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I've actually been trying to get Muslim guests to come on my channel and speak with me, but they just don't want to. So yeah, that would be great.
Okay, awesome. So we have a couple super chats. I got to get these because this is how we keep the lights on, right? Stop scamming, man. Seriously, appreciate you. Among South Africa's Muslims, how many know if it's treasure trove of hominid fossils? I love the way he's going with this, by the way. And what are their thoughts on them? Anyone interested in these? The best are the Australopithecus sabitus. I hope I'm saying the right. Sabitus, Homo naledi, and Littlefoot. So do they know? Do any of the Muslims know about this? Or you're not really sure?
Well, I mean, I haven't been back to South Africa for a very long time, but I think I can speak a little bit about the older generation, like my parents' generation in South Africa. So something that's really important to keep in mind is that apartheid happened in South Africa. And apartheid meant that depending on the color of your skin, you would access a different education compared to people with white skin. And so there's a huge educational disadvantage there, I think, particularly within areas of science and so forth, that it's very possible that a lot of South African Muslims were never exposed to things like evolution or anything like that through a critical lens. I don't know how it is for the younger generation. I've met a few, sort of younger ex-Muslim South Africans, and they definitely talk about stuff like this as being, one of the points that they left. But yeah, I'm not really sure how widespread that knowledge is within that community.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great super chat, and it's an interesting question to ask, especially since it's in this region that these were discovered. So thank you so much, Stop Scamming Man. I appreciate it. We have the notorious, yes, I said notorious, apostate prophet. Dun, dun, dun. Why are ex-Muslims obsessed with Islam? Get a life if you can. Much respect and support to both. That's a great question I want to address. I know he's being funny, but seriously, I want to hear you answer this. People do it to me, like, why do you care to talk about Christianity? Why are you constantly doing this? Why are you obsessed with the research? So why are you obsessed with Islam?
Look, I am a little bit obsessed with Islam. I'm not even going to try and deny that. I think people, when they ask that, they're not really interested in hearing my reasons behind it usually. So it's nice to have a chance to actually address that. I think when there are ideologies in the world that are very, very clearly justifying, enabling, perpetuating very obvious harm against people, very obvious violations of basic human rights in the way that Islam does, especially in the Muslim world, we're not going to progress as a global society if we don't talk about this, if we don't talk about the impact that this particular ideology is having on the lives of people. Nothing is going to change. And so by speaking up and, being a little bit obsessed with Islam and talking about it, I'm hoping that we can start carving out a new pathway towards well overdue change in this space.
Well said. And another short way to answer this question in particular on me would be, if it wasn't relevant in the world, I wouldn't have been obsessed with this. But because it has such an impact, and it is, like you said, it causes such an impact that it's like you look around, I got to say something, to try and address these things that I've been educated on to help kind of defang the sharpness of the harms that are caused by this. Evolve along with all the other stuff. I mean, you got Christianity that's evolved. Look at what's going on in England, right? There's the Church of England is far more evolved than it was in antiquity. So thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it, AP. And we have one more, and then I'll send out a little thing for anyone who might be interested. Rodrigo, thank you for the super chat. Did you have a question? Maybe not. I just want to make sure I don't miss any questions. Okay, looks like you didn't. You just supporting the channel. I appreciate the love. And let's go ahead and open up the door here. And I have full control, so don't worry. Because you know that if you let them have the whole room, and sometimes people can come in, they'll troll or whatever. But I haven't had that happen. It's been pretty good. So here is the link. Only if you're a Muslim, please feel free to join us. We'd love to have a friendly conversation and see what kind of questions you might have for apostate noodle or infidel noodle. Sorry, I'm over here with all the apostates. Everyone is an apostate. You're technically an apostate too, but you know, whatever. All right, waiting on that. In the meantime, while we're waiting on someone to join us, I really do appreciate you joining me today, coming on the show, sharing this stuff. As a female, I know it's a little more difficult because how are you going to fight off a male, right? Someone's like, do you want to keep your head, Derek? What are you doing? And I'm like, do they want to keep their head? You know, like it's a guy thing, but a female, it's a little different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to open up the door to people who are ex-Muslims too? That they have to come make a comment? I could do that. I just don't know. With 158 people, maybe someone is a Muslim who's watching who'd be interested in having a few words with you. Well, how do you feel? What do you feel? What do you feel like doing?
Look, I'm pretty easygoing, Derek. I'm open to whatever the audience feels like doing, whoever wants to chat or whatever, you know, as long as you're respectful and you're not like being an asshole about it, whatever, let's talk.
Cool. Okay. Sending it out one more time. Here is the link. And yes, she was a Muslim for the chat.
Yes, that's kind of the reason we're having this stream. I was indeed a Muslim, guys.
She's tricking everybody. No, I'm just kidding. So Flats Guy, you're Muslim. Feel free to come on if you have a few words you'd like to say. Waiting on you guys. And if not, I could let a few ex-Muslims pop on if you're cool with that.
Yep, sounds
good. So
Flats
Guy said, I don't have any questions. All right. Well, look, Flats Guy, you've been around forever, right? You may not like my ex-Muslim material, but you like all my other stuff. So look, we're somewhat on the same side here, right? Somewhat. All right. Look, anyone and everyone who is either ex-Muslim or Muslim, feel free. But you have to be one or the other. I don't want just any single person joining. I gotta keep it within the milieu of Islam. And while we do that, we have super chat from Chad Oliver. Abrahamic religion, humans are descendants of Adam and Eve. How is that possible? All possible genetic human variation come from two humans. Pretty much inbred is the whole point. Like, yeah, it's definitely a myth. Definitely a myth. But hey, that would be mine and many other scholars' opinions. I wanted to open this up. I mean, we could have delved deeper into certain things that you found grotesque or disagree with within Islam, and we can do that while we're waiting if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I don't really know where to start with that. You'd have to narrow it down a little for me, Derek. Give me a topic to start with, I guess.
I did a video on misogyny. It's a hot topic. It's a very hot one. And there are many Muslims who do, even within their religion. I know one in New York right now. Let me go to bat for Muslims for a second here, right? I have a friend that I helped save his life. His parents are one of the greatest people I know. Like, they really want to save their son's life. They are such great people. His mom reminds me of my mom. One's Christian and one is a Muslim. And she's so sweet. And he treats her like gold. You know, like there's not an abusive situation there. But this is also, we're talking about New York. We're talking about in America. We're talking about where you're kind of westernized. How is it when you get into strict Islam, like a stricter version of this, the treatment of women and in society from your research? Like, how do you, like, where do we, there are variations, I'm sure, in how this treatment is done. But can you talk a little bit about the misogyny?
The misogyny in Islam, okay, that's, again, you know, such a big topic because there's just so much of it. So I guess the starting point is, you know, we look at the scripture, we look at the Quran, the alleged, you know, God's final message, Allah's perfect final message that we don't need to change whatsoever. So in that text itself, you know, we're seeing things like women receive half the inheritance of a man. Women are only allowed to marry Muslim men, but Muslim men can marry Jewish and Christian women. Women can have one husband, and men can have 4 wives. There's obviously things like sex slavery in the Quran as well. I just, I'm a little curious why I'm not allowed to take male concubines. It's always, been such an important
We
question
knew
of
you
mine.
wanted male concubines. We knew it. We knew it.
Don't we all? I mean, yeah, and then there's the infamous what some people call wife-beating verse, verse 434, which is very highly contested. It just kind of depends on who you speak to about it. But people they fixate on that verse. They try to fixate on whether or not it does actually say to beat your wives. But regardless of that, let's say it doesn't say that. That's fine. The verse still says that wives need to be obedient to their husbands, right? The blatant sexism and misogyny in that notion is very undeniable. I mean, it's just such an archaic thing to even consider as being the ultimate truth about the world. I mean, for goodness sake, not all women are straight. I mean, what? So who is a lesbian woman supposed to be obedient to? I don't think she's going to have a husband. So there is so much misogyny within Allah's perfect final message. And that's not even getting into the hadiths, which I'm sure you've seen a bit of that as well,
Heard a
Derek.
little bit about it.
Yeah, they're a little bit shocking. Women has a deficient mind, and so that's why her testimony is worth half that of a man. A woman can never be a successful leader. All these sorts of ideas are in authentic Islamic scripture. So yeah, there's a lot of misogyny, and you can only imagine how that scripture plays out in terms of the actions and the values and the beliefs of Muslims themselves.
I think what's most shocking about all these things that you do say is there are Muslims that will say, you're wrong, right? They'll say, nope, nope, nope. Some will say, I'm Quran only. And that's like guys who find my channel. And that's very rare. I wish I found more Muslim females. There is one, Vicky. I'm going to be emailing her back here soon. She's really, really, she knows Arabic and everything too. So it's like, come on, you can't use that one against her. Or you could argue that no imam specifically trained her to think in a certain way or whatever. That's another little loophole. But one of the things that they will say is either those aren't accurate hadiths, or we accept those hadiths, but you don't interpret them properly. Or you'll get some of them that will say, and this is the recent Daniel Hikachu, whatever, I can't even pronounce his name, who like come out and say, this is Dil, this is God's word, this is what you need to believe. And now I'm giving him a pat on the back in one way, but also saying you're ridiculous. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I think Muslims would also, most Muslims who are probably on the internet world on YouTube will look at him probably going, you're over the top, dude. You're too much. But is he not accurately, somewhat seemingly trying to represent what it says?
Look, I think that he is. I think that he genuinely believes that he is doing a good thing by advocating for domestic violence against women and slavery and, all the other bizarre things that he does advocate for. I think it's interesting, though, because obviously the reason that so many Muslims will say to you, you're wrong, you're interpreting it wrong, and blah, 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 is because they know that these ideas are harmful and bad. And I think that's a good thing. I think that them admitting, no, I don't agree with this. That's actually quite terrible. That's a first step. That's a great first step. What I'd like to see more of is them not taking that frustration out on the people bringing awareness to these issues, but actually having these discussions with the scholars who are the ones perpetuating the notion that these things are true. That's where you need to take your issue up, because you're not going to solve anything by yelling at me and telling me that I'm wrong. I'm not the one using these scriptures to do and justify harmful things to people, So yeah. I think needs to be a bit of a direction shift there.
Yeah, I do want to address this just so everybody knows. I've actually wrote him. He hasn't responded to me yet. I've also wrote other Muslims on other channels and asking to see if they would be interested in coming on. So, and these are other like apologists out there that are Muslims, to have like critical conversations. I'm not interested in debates. It feels oftentimes it's a dick measuring contest, and it's all about like who's right and who's wrong, and it's more about like why do you think that way, and like going into those conversations I think are good. So I have wrote Daniel. He hasn't responded to me. You can clip this, send this to him, let him know. I'd be happy to have a conversation with him, and to hear why he thinks what he thinks, and I'll be interested in pressing him on some things to see where he's willing to go, and what does he think about the coward Muslims out there who aren't willing to actually stand up for what they actually believe their book is saying, right? Or they want to reinterpret it. I'll be interested to see what Daniel says against his own people who deny what he's saying. It'll be interesting to kind of see how that works out.
Well, he does. He speaks up about them on Twitter quite often. I mean, before he got banned, he would say, these liberal Muslims are damaging the Ummah, and shame on you, and you're getting westernized. So he's quite vocal about the fact that he really thinks that they are bad Muslims.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I'd be interested in also having other Muslims say why he's wrong, just to have conversation. William, I've got a super chat, then I've got someone in the chat we're going to bring on. William says, and thank you for the super chat, could secularly educated and free-thinking Muslims and ex-Muslims change Islam and majority Islamic countries towards social liberalism by 2100?
2100. Look, first of all, I don't think it's the responsibility of ex-Muslims to be changing Islam. I don't even think there are any ex-Muslims who, intend or who want to do that. That needs to come from within the Muslim community. And sure, maybe some robust conversations between our two communities can help push that along. But ultimately, that's not an us problem. That's kind of a you problem, if you know what I mean. And that is going to be a very, very difficult process, because if you look at what the majority mainstream views are in Islam about a lot of things, they are the more, fundamentalist, traditional interpretations. That's why we still have things like 12 countries implementing the capital punishment for apostasy. That's why they still exist, because that is who is dominating the mainstream view at the moment. And so unless these very rigid thinkers are willing to start changing their minds, which quite frankly, I don't think they are going to be in their lifetime, that change isn't going to happen. So I do think we've got a long way to go.
Wow. Yeah, I wish you'd be wrong about that. You know what I mean? We all wish that would be, Seriously. All right, I'm bringing on our friend here, Osri. Welcome to Myth Vision. Are you a Muslim?
No. Hello?
You're not a Muslim?
Yeah.
Yes?
I don't know how to recognize myself. I'm a closet atheist.
Okay, hey, that's fine too. But you were a Muslim?
Somewhat, yes.
So do you have any question, or do you have anything in particular you would like to just bring up?
Yes, I have two questions for Infidel Noodle.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The first question is it wrong to spread your ideology of women's rights? Isn't it wrong? For example, the hijab is like a culture to Muslim. Shouldn't you respect that? So how do you respond?
Look, I don't think that it's wrong for people to engage in an open dialogue about what their thoughts are on particular ideologies. I think that if an ideology is quite clearly causing and justifying harm, then in particular, that does obviously need to be criticized and discussed quite openly. You mentioned the example of women's rights. And whether we should just kind of, respect that Muslim women want to wear hijab or whatever it is. From my personal point of view, when I speak about these issues, particularly with hijab, I have never, ever stated something like, we have to ban hijab, or Muslim women shouldn't wear it or shouldn't be allowed to wear it, because I don't actually agree with that. I think my issue is that all women, Muslim or not, need to have the choice, okay? So they need to be able to choose whether they actually want to wear that hijab. And so that's where I kind of take the direction of that conversation. But I don't think it's bad for anyone to discuss their ideology and their beliefs. If it's not causing obvious harm to people, then I don't think there's a reason why we shouldn't be able to have these discussions.
Okay. My second question is, you can gain more profit, more money from doing something better. So, why do you still intend of doing activism work?
So I don't do my activism for monetary gain. I don't know why people think that I'm like making heaps of money off of doing this. I rarely ever, the only income that I get from activism is through ad revenue on YouTube. And that's, not a lot. There's not a lot there at all. I do have a full-time job outside of the ex-Muslim world. So I don't do this for money. I rely on my job and my career for an income. And I've discussed, at the beginning of the stream, the reasons why I actually do choose to continue my activism.
Uh, can
Appreciate
can
that,
you?
Audrey. I've got 2 other people waiting in the chat, my friend.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Yes, and until next time, we can always do this in the future for sure. Thank you so much for being kind.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
You have a good one.
Bye.
All right, we got a super chat real quick, and then I want to bring on Natasha. We got a couple super chats here. The question is from Chad Oliver: What do you guys think about the future of Islam in the Middle East? It's a big question.
That's a big question. Look, it's this could go either way. In order for change to really start happening in these countries, it needs to be an internal thing. It needs to come from within those countries. Personally, some days I'll read a bunch of news stories and I feel very bleak actually about the future of these countries, especially because sometimes it looks like they're actually regressing further into more fundamentalist Islam, and that really scares me. But then you can look at a country like Sudan, who actually abolished the death penalty for apostasy last year, and that gives me a little bit of hope. But again, I think it could go either way. Just depends what day you ask me and what I've been exposed to within that particular time period.
Right. Thank you so much, Chad. I have hopes that somehow we can, I don't know how this has happened, but somehow that this ideology will cool down. Imagine it has a hot temper right now, and it's something that might cool down, and we realize how to live together and be more peaceful. Flat Sky, come back on. Natasha's next, and then I'm going to bring you on. One more super chat here. Stop scamming, man. Thank you for the super chat again. An online news article, Are Arabs Turning Their Backs on Religion, showed a huge increase in non-religious in North Africa, outstripping the birth rate. I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a lot of free thinkers emerging from these regions, and I think it's important to keep in mind that it's very difficult to actually accurately measure the amount of people that are leaving Islam, because in these countries, like, there are very serious legal repercussions for leaving Islam. So for people to be open about that is quite difficult. But yeah, I've seen those statistics, and there does seem to be a big increase in people who are leaving religion. And so that definitely gives me a lot of hope.
Wow. Thank you so much for the super chat and great response. All right, Natasha, welcome to Myth Vision.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Feel free to ask your question, and I'll do my best to answer it. I think it's directed at me, but I'm more than welcome for whatever you would like to ask.
Yeah, I have a question for you as well as for Infidel Noodle if I have enough time, if that's okay. So, like I asked you, I was just wondering, because I did listen when you had Rabbi Tovia Singer on to disprove Christianity, and I was wondering why not the same for like Islam. Like, you brought on a lot of people. I've listened, and we could talk on and on about that, but why not bring on someone that's actually studied Islam? That's my question to you.
So just to answer this, and this is a great question, and you are right. Like, why haven't I had a Muslim? By the way, I have emails that I have sent, and I have a couple Muslim scholars right now. I'm waiting for them to answer me back on what day works for them. These won't be your extremist, like hardcore fundamentalist. That I'm looking for actual educated men who have a lot of source material they're working with, and not just tradition. They're able to kind of think outside of the fundamentalist box a little bit. I'll give you an example, and I'll mention one of these scholars just so everybody knows. Right now, I'm waiting for Khalil Andali. He's a PhD, and he is a Muslim. He is going to come on Myth Vision. I want to talk about the historical Muhammad because personally, I know Dr. Robert M. Price. He thinks Muhammad probably didn't exist. I don't know where he's at in his thinking. I personally think there was a Muhammad. I also think there was probably a Jesus, even though someone might laugh at me and go like, what do you have that is really him, right? So there's a lot there that I want to learn. And I know that you can't always go to only your enemies to get ideas. But the reason I had Rabbi on, and I never take jabs at Judaism when he's on. It's always at Christianity. The same way I wouldn't want to have I wouldn't have like a Muslim scholar come on to jab at Islam. That's not my interest. My interest is to learn. But I don't even have Rabbi come on to teach me about Judaism. And this is the problem in the scholarship, my opinion. I have connections like crazy with scholars. But when I start to look into Islam, that connection is so small. Like to get them on, most of the people aren't accessible. They're not interested in doing interviews because they're afraid of what's going to happen. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not making this up. I'm telling you, I've been emailing them saying, please, I just want to have a friendly conversation. I give them this rap sheet of all the scholars I've had from Judaism and Christianity. And I want to learn about Islam to understand it from more of a humanist standpoint. It's not there to like destroy Islam, but I do think that there's probably a human, normal explanation for its development. Just like you might look at Christianity and go, well, they wrote some myths, but there's probably just a guy at the basis and the cult evolved and developed into what it is today. Or maybe you don't, because if you're Muslim, you might have Jesus might play a role into your ideas. So use a different example, like Joseph Smith, right? Like he had golden tablets and the whole Mormon church developed and stuff. So my goal is to try and have more people come on, but I don't know many people who aren't Muslim that know Islam very well. And it's not a very unearthed area. The people that do it are Christians mostly. They're not PhDs. They probably don't know Arabic. They know a little here and there. And I'm not speaking all the way, but there are some. And some of these guys, like I recently had on, I think might be a bigot. I asked him if he was a bigot, and he said, well, it depends on who you ask. And that was Bill Warner. But I think the guy probably is a bigot. And I'm not trying to be rude. I really think that.
Yeah, no, of course.
I was like, dude, why aren't you more open to people like progressing? So I don't want to take all Infidel Noodle's time here, but like I'm trying the best I know how right now. And I do side with these people.
Yeah.
So.
No, of course. I do have one suggestion, though. I don't know if you've ever watched Sheikh Uthman. I think he's based in California. He has a little Dawah table set up there, and he talks to a lot of people. And search him up and watch some of his videos. Okay. He talks to atheists. He talks to Christians. He's very calm. You know, he's very nice, and I don't think he would come off as very aggressive. Like I do know some Muslims come off as being very aggressive sometimes, and I don't think that's what they're aiming to do. I think some people just don't like when you're saying something against them, is what it is. But it would be very interesting to see him on.
Well, yeah, and I also wrote Daniel. So Daniel Hikachu, whatever, he hasn't responded to me. I don't want to mispronounce the guy's name. I'm like seriously wanting to have a conversation with these people. So I have wrote them. But thank you, Natasha. Did you have a question for Infidel?
Yes. So my question to you, Infidel, is your knowledge on the Quran. When did you, have you read the Quran, like from cover to the back?
Yes, I've definitely read the Quran. So I grew up, you can't pray in Islam if you don't know some Quranic verses. So growing up, I became familiar with the Quran through reading it in Arabic, which is very problematic for a lot of Muslims out there because the vast majority of them cannot actually understand Arabic. So we are taught to read it, to write in Arabic, but we have no idea what we're saying. And so it was when I got a little bit older and I started to really develop those critical thinking skills that I actually sat down and started to read the entire thing, like you said, cover to cover in English, in a language that I understood. And that was my turning point, because when you read God's, Allah's perfect final message and you realize that it's not that great, not that perfect, there's there's only so many directions that you can take that in. So that was a big turning point for me, actually. Reading the Quran itself was quite eye-opening for me.
So just a follow-up question to that. When you were reading, like, if you saw verses that you didn't understand, did you actually look into like the history or the context behind those verses?
So there's something called tafsir in Islam, where you can go and look up what scholars have said about particular verses. So that was what I consulted first. I did also speak to like local imams and stuff like that, just to kind of really branch out and make sure that I wasn't limiting my understanding to my own interpretation. But again, that just reinforced the ideas that I had, that I really wasn't agreeing with what I was reading. When I actually went and spoke to like imams and stuff, that again, like the responses that I would get would either be things like, sometimes we might not understand something Allah says, but we just have to trust him. And I'm kind of like, well, you're just telling me not to think for myself. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. No, I definitely didn't just, read it and then decide I'm leaving. That's it. There was a little bit more research than that. Yeah.
No, of course. I remember seeing you on Twitter, and I saw some of the responses that you were getting. So I feel like where other people are coming, that's what I wanted to know from reading your things is, did you actually read or actually look into it? But yeah, I know you have a channel. If I were to message you directly, I think your TikTok's private as well. Would you respond? Because I wouldn't mind speaking with you just to get a little bit more understanding, because I know my time's limited.
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, Derek, you go.
No, please, go ahead.
You can contact me on Twitter or Instagram. I get a lot of messages, so sometimes I don't get a chance to respond very quickly, but I will try to if I get a chance. Yep.
Okay, no problem. It was nice speaking with you both.
Thank you, Natasha, for coming on and being such a friendly guest.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Awesome. That was really nice. And you could tell she's obviously a Muslim, but it was a really kind conversation. I'd love to see where that might go in the future, especially if you talk with her. We have a couple people here. Flat Sky, I think he's having like technical difficulties. He's like popping in and out, and he was next in line. And then we have a couple more. Then we'll wrap things up. And I seriously appreciate you with all your throat problems. The antibiotics aren't working worth a crap. So for anyone in the chat, yes, I have actually contacted Daniel. How do you say his last name?
Oh, it's Hakikachu.
Hakikachu. Okay. I've messaged him, and I've messaged a couple other, they're big into philosophy mainly, Muslims, and said, hey, let's have like a discussion, conversation or whatnot. All right. They're waiting on their response on that, maybe in the future. Flat Sky, welcome to Myth Vision. I hope your mic works. Are you there, my friend? Your mic's not working.
I can kind of hear something. You just need to like speak.
Hey, can you hear this?
Yes. You're muted.
You're muted.
We're having problems here. Flat. What's going on, man?
So your microphone is muted at the moment. So you've got to click the little microphone button to unmute it.
All right. I'm sorry, man. It's not working. We got to make sure your mic's working next time, my friend. I'm sorry. It's not working. I got to let Post Muslim on. We don't have too much time. My good friend, Post Muslim, welcome back.
Hello. Hi, Derek. Wow. It's so cool to actually speak to you.
Hey, thank you seriously for coming on, and perfect guest to have a conversation with. So shoot, go for it.
Definitely. Well, first of all, I love the content that you guys make. Big fan. And I'm going to continue to stick around and see what you guys got coming next. My question is actually for Infidel Noodle, though. So, obviously, I'm an ex-Muslim, and Islam informed a heavy and lengthy part of my life, such that I'm unable to kind of walk away from that without trying to, discuss it and share with people how it affected me, how it affects others, and just kind of dissect it. But I find there are some challenges. First of all, in general, I'm concerned for my safety, for my privacy, and I also don't really know how to get started in terms of where would be a good place to kind of get my foot in the door. And finally, I know the way that I want to present my content is going to be looking at Islam from a sociological or anthropological standpoint, where we try to identify if the Quran, the Hadith, and the Prophet's autobiographical content is more in line with 7th century patriarchal Arabian values than it would be like a God who's divorced from human emotions and desires. And so that's kind of the perspective that I want to take. I'm not interested in debating people or going into an argument with the sheikh or something, because there's just a lot of rationalization and back and forth involved that I don't want to get into. So I know that was kind of a huge kind of loaded question, but let me know what you guys think.
So you
And feel free
so
to comment as well, Derek, because I'd love to hear what you have to say as well.
So I think Derek is probably the best person to ask in terms of how to kind of get your foot in the door, and build your channel, because for me, I never really intended to have a channel or to do anything that I'm doing right now. It was kind of something that happened by accident, if I'm being completely honest. And I rarely make videos. I'm really bad at all that kind of stuff. If I feel like making something, if the urge hits me or whatever, then I'll sit down and do it. But yeah, Derek might be better placed to talk about how you can grow your channel and where to sort of start.
How do
with
you
that
like
stuff.
maintain your privacy and your safety like in your life?
It's difficult. Yeah, it's not easy. If you're living in a Muslim country, I would not be using your real name. I wouldn't be showing my face if I were you. If you've seen like what's happened to people like Sheriff Gaber, you need to be very careful.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
He's in Egypt, right?
Yeah, he's stuck in
his
Egypt.
videos are amazing, by the way. I mean, absolutely
So amazing.
But he showed his face, number one. Number two, I would do VPN things too, like get some technical stuff to protect you. Me, I live in a military town, all right? And most of the Muslims I've encountered are friendly. I haven't had a death threat yet, and I hope it stays that way. I hope they understand that I never was a believer of their faith and never will probably be a believer. But at the end of the day, this isn't an area where you could just roll up and think things are okay. Like there's some crazy people who live here, by the way. But anyway, there's people who've actually created channels literally as a mascot or something completely different from what they are. And I'm sure they get criticism. Why do you hide behind this little character you've created? But I'm sure plenty of ex-Muslims and people who have been through this will understand that. And that might be something worth considering if that's something you want to do.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And as for my take or my angle, kind of observing the humanity in Islam's laws and in its history and just like in its kind of rituals and values, what do you think about going in that direction?
I mean, honestly, it's gonna be your call on what you're actually wanting to do. Because for me, I'm all over the place, as you know. Like I didn't even plan on having Islam be a topic on the channel until recently. It came to my attention. I had a bunch of people making truth claims on videos that had nothing to do with it. So I was like, hold on, they're like asking for me to come and check it out. And so I saw there was a world and a community of that going on. So it just depends on what you want to do with your channel and the particular things you want to address. I'd love to see a progression take place within the community of believers that are Muslim. That's just me looking at it from the outside. I would hope more people did not agree with Daniel Hikikachu.
Oh, that guy's a legitimate psychopath. Jesus Christ.
I would hope more people disagree with that. You know what I mean? Than agree with it. So my fingers are crossed. We've got a couple people in the chat, man.
Okay.
Post
Hey,
Muslim,
thank you for your time.
super chat that day, by the way. And that was a great clip with Dr. Price.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
You too, my friend.
Bye.
Have a good one. Let me get one super chat out of the way, and then we're going to bring on Flats Guy, and then I've got a couple other people in the chat, and I'll try and make these quick. So, Constellation Pegasus, thank you. Isn't Islam late in the game in history? How does Islam account for that? Just asking because I know nothing of Islam. What would you like to say? Would you like to address it?
I mean, in terms of being late in the game, it's the youngest Abrahamic religion. And some people argue that maybe that's the reason it hasn't really gone through like what Christianity went through with the New Testament and the Old Testament. But then again, you can sort of argue that that's irrelevant because Islam itself as an ideology fundamentally rejects the idea of changing the authentic text, especially obviously the Quran. So that's my thoughts. I don't know what you think about that, Derek.
There's so much you can say, right? Just to put it simple, if you're doing archaeology, usually the deeper the layers you go, the older, right? So here's your tower of Abrahamic faiths. Judaism at the bottom, really polytheism at the very, very bottom. But anyway, I'm going back to Canaanite religion. Scratch that. So Abrahamic faith, you have Judaism, you've got Christianity, you have Islam. It's a Jenga tower. If you pull out Judaism and you've already pulled out Christianity, you don't really have, you have something that's using something that's already fallen, in my worldview. And it's so simple to me. Now I'm just looking for the dots. I just don't have all the information yet. And I'm looking into it and I'm going to analyze it. And it's going to be one of those things where I'll be able to say, oh, no wonder they used, for example, the Alexander romance motif from Alexander the Great, claiming that he worshiped the true God or he was a righteous man. We know he's a polytheist. But that's historical evidence versus what the tradition might say, or going into the men who went to sleep in the caves for 300 years. We know that that's a Christian myth that was in the early church. So when we look at that and I get all that information together, to me, it'll be pretty simple. But thank you so much for the super chat. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. What do you think?
I thought it made perfect sense. Some people in the chat are saying that it's not the youngest Abrahamic religion. I might actually be wrong. Am I wrong about that, Derek? You might know more than me.
There might be like little splinter type versions of things off of that.
Yeah, sorry. I meant to say like out of, I guess, the big ones, the ones with heaps of followers. My understanding is that it's the youngest.
Someone said I suck at Jenga. Dude, how'd you know, man? No, it's definitely out of the three, obviously the youngest, but they might be arguing the tradition and acting like, the Kaaba was where Adam landed. So that might be their, I don't know. Anyway, Flats Guy, welcome back, man. I hope your mic is working, my friend.
Hey, can you hear me? Hey, Derek.
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, sorry, my computer was crashing at the same time. So yeah, seems to be working now. But I'm Muslim. So yeah, here I am.
Welcome, man. Look.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to ask. Like Infidel Noodle, I don't have anything to ask her as such, but I might like comment on the previous question. And so like the latest Abrahamic religion, there's a bit of like mythicism involved in all of this because I don't believe in Jesus. Number one, I don't believe in Jesus existed.
High five.
Right? I'm a mythicist. Yeah, high five.
I know. I've seen your comments. Trust me, man.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm trying to get across to you, man. There's no Jesus in the Quran.
Oh, so you take Isa to be someone different?
Yeah, and that solves your whole mystery as well. I've been trying to shout it in comments. It solves your whole mystery. We know who Jesus was. So he kind of existed in Nazareth because he was the nephew of Moses. Hosea is the nephew of Moses. Is Jesus in the Quran? There's your mystery. And there's like been some cover-ups in the Bible to cover that up because they say, oh, he was the son of Nun. And then they've got other things. There's like I could like talk about this because you've done years of talking about this topic, you know. But it's related to Jesus, number one. Number two, the Quran was written before the Bible. The Quran was written before the Bible.
Oh, hold on.
But before
you believe
the Gospel.
the Quran was written before the Bible?
Before the Gospels. Yeah.
No.
So the Quran was written before the Gospel.
Where are you getting this from? Where are you getting this from, bro?
It will take me a while to explain, but I can give you all the references, all the sources, everything.
Email me this because I'm sure
all right.
this is conspiracy stuff. By the way, I'm just
No, it's not. This
certain.
is real Islam. This is the thing. What you guys are discussing is the conspiracy. The Kaaba is fake. The whole storyline is fake, right? Muhammad
Every
and Jesus,
Muslim in the chat is
up.
calling you not a Muslim. They're saying you're not a Muslim right now. They're thinking you're.
Oh, they're gonna say that because they're not Muslims. They're Christians. They're Christians. They believe in Jesus. They're Christians. According to the Quran, all the Muslims of the world are actually Christians because they've rejected Isa. What's left? The whole Quran is about Isa. So they've rejected Isa. There's nothing left. You know, there's nothing. They're Christians. They got no right to talk about. They got no right to talk about. Oh, you're a Muslim or you're not a Muslim because they're not, they're all not Muslims. None of you are Muslims. Everything is fake. So what's left? Jesus is fake, and
So
you
do
guys
you really
believe in Jesus.
though,
That's
like-
Christianity.
I got to ask you this because you don't have a question for her. I just got to ask you one more question. Then I will have to let you go because I got to let her go.
All right.
Are you really? Do you really believe in the Quran? Do you believe in that God?
Yeah,
And
man.
why, after everything you've heard me say on the channel about Judaism and Christianity, like,
Well,
what
because
makes you
it's the
convinced?
original religion. It's the original religion. It's the pre-temple religion. That's what the Quran is. The elephant story is about Antiochus IV. So it's all about the Masjid al-Haram is basically the temple of Jerusalem. It's not the Kaaba in Mecca. That's fake. It's all like mythicism. This is why it's right up your alley, because Jesus and Muhammad are both mythical characters being used to cover up the real characters of the Quran. So we want you to win. I want you to win. But all these Muslims are Christians. You got to realize that.
Dude, you just pissed off every Muslim.
I
in
don't
there, man.
care. I don't care. Do what you can. Do what you want. You know, Allah will smite them all. God will change their skins in hell. I don't care.
Oh
You know,
my
that's what's about them.
gosh.
That's how I see it, basically. I'm just telling you the real,
Wow.
this is the point of view. This is how a lot of people see it, but we don't say this stuff because everyone's against us.
Holy
Everyone's
moly, man.
Christians.
Well,
Even
look,
the
Black
even
Guy-
the mythicists are on their side, so what's left?
Well,
you
look,
know?
man, I thank you so much for joining me. I've got a couple super chats I got to take. Thank you
All
for
right,
getting
Rav.
your mic fixed. And I've never heard anything like this, but
I
thank you
know.
for
I'm trying to
entertaining us.
shout it out. Nobody
At the
listens.
least, you've entertained me tonight. At the least.
All
So
right.
thank you, my friend.
I'm happy. Okay, have fun.
You have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Holy moly. Someone says thank you for the chat, or thanks for the chat. Osri, thank you. I appreciate it. Schizophrenia. Stop Scamming Man says regarding Gog and Magog, Yajud and Majud in Islam. Am I saying that right?
Gog and Magog. Yeah, that's how I say it.
Yeah, but I mean the Yajud and Majud. I hope I'm saying that right. In Islam.
I think you're saying it right. I don't know. I can't
The
remember.
first century Jewish historian Josephus recounted a legend of Alexander walling off the people of Magog. The earliest legend spoke of Gog of Magog. Thank you. I need to look into this. Email me, Derek@mythvisionpodcast.com. You are the man, always coming through. Thank you so much for the super chat. But Gog and Magog is an interesting topic. I don't know enough about right now in the vein of Islam. I do want to look into it because we see most scholarship sees failed apocalyptic prophecies within not only the Hebrew Bible, but within the New Testament. And I'm wondering if we see the same thing in Islam, like predictions that didn't happen and they were supposed to at a certain time, location, or whatever. That's stuff I need to investigate. Have you heard anything about it?
Yeah, Islam makes a lot of interesting sort of prophecies that just obviously never came true. Apostate Prophet and Abdullah Samir have done some really good content on that, especially with the Gog and Magog thing. I think Abdullah Samir has talked about it quite a bit before, so they're probably the best people to speak to about that. But yeah, there are a lot of you'll find some very interesting prophecies in Islam when you go down that rabbit hole.
Okay. Need to hit my boy up. Someone thinks that our boy Flats guy was trolling.
I think he might have
thinks
been.
that. I don't know. He's been around for a long time. He's been commenting. I think he's sincere. I know that sounds funny to most people, but like I think he really thinks this. Constellation Pegasus, thank you again, my friend. Like Judaism and Christianity, no evidence and contradictions all over the place. Isn't Islam fractured the same way? Different competing theologies? That's a good point. Different like versions of it floating around and nobody can agree on what is and what isn't, that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, Islam is incredibly fractured. I mean, just look at the Shia Sunni divide, and that's just two of them. There's what are we up to? Like 73 sects now. I think they're even considering like the whole liberal modern Muslim kind of movement its own kind of new sect even. So even today, it's still branching off into different ways of understanding. So it is very, very fractured.
Yeah, my friend said he's not trolling. I'm literally chatting with him. I'm letting him know my email, just to see like if he had any video or somewhere like some of his sources as to where he's getting these ideas. Look, I don't believe anything when it comes to that, right? I do think Judaism comes earlier. I go with the scholarship on this, but I'm interested to see where he's getting his sources. So I told him my email, and please hit me up, Flat Sky. Be interested to see what you have to say. What have I not addressed with you on this first episode, Infidel, that I should really know about you?
I wasn't expecting that question.
I know.
I don't know.
Ever asked you that?
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I feel like we kind of covered the main points, unless there's something really obvious that I've missed. But nothing's coming to my mind.
What's your social security number? I'm just kidding. If you ever sneeze one day and that mask comes off, oh my gosh. I'm just saying, don't sneeze too hard. Any comments or questions in the chat? Nobody else wanted to pop in. I do want to let her go because you've been talking for a long time and the antibiotics are not doing any justice to your cold or whatever you got going on. You don't have COVID, do you?
No, I don't think I have COVID. I think I just have a really shitty chest infection. So that's fun. I'm just trying to scroll through the comments. I think there were a couple that stood out, but now I've just completely forgotten like all of them. Are there any interesting ones, Derek, that have been standing out to you?
No, look, we're not going to go and open up the room again now. Like we're so late in the game now in the interview, but I did have the link there earlier for you guys to join. We did have a female, and I really love that. I love it when a woman is like able to come forward, because we guys, we're not ashamed of our game. We'll come on, hey, let me tell you what I think. But it's really cool to see a female that was willing to open up and come on. We need to see more of that.
Definitely.
Question came in, how do we contact you? Derek at mythvisionpodcast.com. Putting it in the chat. People, and do you have contact, or is there a way that people can get a hold of you, or what do you recommend?
Twitter and Instagram is probably the best way to contact me. I have an email address, but to be completely honest, I don't even remember which one I'm using. But if you go on my YouTube channel, you know that feature where you can contact someone and it gives you their email address. I think there's something there that you can use. But I'm really bad at responding to things, guys. So I'm really sorry if I don't. I am so bad with that stuff.
Take my word on it, okay? Trust me. I've been waiting, and then she had stuff happen, and then, yeah. Well, I can tell you this much. I don't know your name. I don't know how to pronounce your name, my friend. I don't hate them. I just like girls a lot better. That's all. That's all it is, man. I just, just being honest. Someone actually tried to do that yesterday on James is Tired. My friend James is a Christian, was interviewing Abdullah Samir, and someone was like, Abdullah likes sexuality or something. I'm in the chat going, oh, I like sexuality, like just being an idiot back to these people who are being stupid. But we didn't even get into all of that as well. Like really, we did mention briefly, like if there was a lesbian, how that situation would work in terms of the misogyny and stuff. But in today's times, people, I feel like, need to get with the times.
Definitely.
But then again, you're in a region where everybody's in this like vacuum thinking in kind of an old way. That's the tough part.
That's exactly right.
Look, we got people wanting to talk, but we can't tonight. I'm sorry. It's been too late. Can we do this again?
Definitely. I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked getting a chance to actually speak to people. I've been really wanting to kind of connect with Muslims in that way for a while now. So maybe we could even do one where we just try to have, an open dialogue between maybe even like myself and another ex-Muslim, and we can try to get some Muslims on the show. I think that would be really great.
We got one person who really wants to talk to you, and it's a female. can we let Milahan Philosopher's Corner?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'm sending it out, and nobody else, just her, please. I'm opening it up for her just before we go. I would like to see another female be able to talk with you for sure. I hope I said your name right. I apologize if I didn't. And thank you, Stop Scamming Man, for grabbing my attention there. But I definitely want to do this in the future and follow up. Is it possible you two and Mr. Price get together for a live show one day? Just got here. Would you be interested in doing a show with Dr. Robert M. Price at some point?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty open and flexible with talking to anyone, really. I mean, I even tried to have a debate with Ali Dawah in the past. I don't know if you know who that is. So I really...
I don't know. There's so many names and people. I'm not familiar with the area too well, but I think he's a big Muslim online, right? Like he's a big YouTuber.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the phrase "we're proud of that," he is the man behind that phrase. So definitely look him up. You'll find some interesting stuff there.
Welcome, my friend. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I apologize.
That's okay. It's Milahan, but you can say Milan. I just had some. Yeah. There's an echo, so forgive me if I pause to listen. I don't know why there's an echo. Like when I talk, I can hear myself, but I'll just so if I pause for a second, that's why. But my question to Infinite Noodle was, how do you now, as an apostate, deal with the idea of hell or the hereafter? Do you ever think about that in a way of which, how do I keep myself out of a place like that, or do you have a different concept now of like Catholic purgatory, or what do you think about the next dimension?
I don't believe in the concept of heaven or hell. If someone was to bring forth very concrete, convincing evidence, I would certainly be open to looking at that and potentially, taking that into consideration and maybe even changing my mind. But where I stand at the moment is that based on the information available to me, it's not convincing to have me be afraid of this concept of a hell, because I simply don't believe in it. When I left Islam, obviously, because of the indoctrination that I'd been raised in, especially in Islam. So Derek, that might actually be an interesting thing. I don't know if you've heard of this, but we're sort of taught these things about like torture in the grave that's going to happen to you. And it's quite intense as a child to receive that sort of information. And so as I was deconverting, there was a little bit of fear there. Because as you know, when you're deconstructing from a religion, it is very much a physiological change that's happening in your brain. You're literally rewiring these neural pathways that have been developed, over most of my life. Yeah. So there was a short period of fear, but as I became more confident in my beliefs about the world and the afterlife and that kind of thing, that fear went away as that process went on. So yeah, I don't have that anymore.
That's interesting. So like do you ever go to graveyards or anything like that and really just like contemplate like there's going to be a day or when you're not here anymore and like you don't feel any type of like I need to make sure that I do as good as I can, or like it seems something that I think more people would think about when they're an apostate is like, how are you had such that power of like the religion, and hellfire is obviously something you talk a lot about in Islam. We talk a lot about that. So I wonder is like, how did you get that out of your head? Because it seems something very powerful. So I'm wondering like, how are you going to deal with that? I find it very curious because I think about death a lot, not only because I've had near-death experiences, but I've been around a lot of death. And so I was a liberal atheist, and now I'm like much more right-wing, conservative, Salafi Muslim, obviously. So it's like we're kind of like opposites here. And I'm part Cherokee and Italian, and you're from Australia, so we have a little bit of like a difference. You know what I mean? It's like we're on opposite sides. So I'm very curious to see like how you deal with death.
Yeah, look, firstly, I'm not quite convinced that we are opposites. I think if we sat down and had a more elaborate conversation, we'd find that we have a lot more in common than we might realize at the moment. So in my spare time, I don't go to graveyards and contemplate the idea of death. it is something that, you know, I thought about a lot. Like you said, going from that very structured way of thinking about the afterlife to coming to this new way of understanding the world, where I simply don't believe in heaven or hell anymore. For me, I think in a way that experience was actually quite freeing, because I sort of realized that the time that I have now on this earth, this very limited time, is quite amazing. Actually, it's quite miraculous. Well, not miraculous, but it's quite. It's a huge coincidence, the fact that I'm even alive at all. And so it does give me this sort of newfound appreciation for my life, and for my ability to make meaning and find my purpose in the time that I do have here. But again, because I simply don't believe, you know, because we don't choose our beliefs. If you believe in something, it's not really a choice. You either believe in it or you don't. I simply don't believe in the notion of a hell anymore. It was a process to deconstruct from that idea of hell. But with where I'm at now today, I don't think about death and the afterlife in the way that I did when I was still a Muslim. And for me personally, I found that quite liberating, actually.
Interesting. So how do you deal with evil? Have you ever seen something that's so evil where you're like, this is something that is otherworldly? Have you ever had, like, because I've seen a lot of evil, like where you're like, that is so evil that I can't even describe it. So how do you, as a person, like really look at that? How do you deal with evil?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen so many examples of evil in my life. You know, I've worked in prison before. I've actually worked with sex offenders who show no remorse whatsoever for their crimes. So I've certainly seen very blatant examples of what I would consider to be evil. And I think for me, you know, because I don't believe in this idea of an afterlife anymore, it sort of makes me more motivated to understand that the only justice, you know, in my world, in my point of view, the only justice that we're going to achieve is during this lifetime. So that's how I approach the notion of evil. You know, I don't think that because evil exists, there must therefore be this punishment awaiting those who are evil. Yeah, I guess if I were to sum it up, it would just sort of be, you know, it is what it is. And either we're going to achieve justice in this lifetime, in this world right now, or we're not. And that's sort of it for me, really.
That's interesting. So it's like you have this concept of earthly justice, which seems like you can escape that pretty easy. You pay a judge, you use corrupt cops, you do something, money can leave. So it's like, don't you feel like there'd be a better system of justice in the hereafter, where an all-knowing God can decide, okay, I'm going to count everything. Allah is swift in accounting. Everything you did was seen. You're not going to escape punishment. Whereas from an atheist perspective, it's as long as you can escape, you got the money, you can be like El Chapo Guzman of Mexico, pay your way out of prison. That's justice. So how do you really, like, doesn't that seem more idealistic to think that you can get earthly justice instead of thinking that there's a creator being in the next dimension that will hold us accountable? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not saying that I don't want to believe that there is a higher power who is going to serve some sort of ultimate justice in an afterlife. I think that would be wonderful. Again, it's just coming back to the fact that based on the evidence available to me, I'm not convinced that that exists. It's not that I don't want it to exist per se. It's just that I genuinely don't believe that it does. It would be great if these people who escaped justice in our earthly life were held to account in some sort of an afterlife. But as far as my understanding of the world goes, I just don't believe that that's the case. And I think it's important to note as well that from the perspective of Islam, I, as an apostate, would be one of those people in hell having my skin roasted over and over because of my disbelief, because of the way that I speak about Islam. I would be in there with those horrible, awful people, you know, the sex offenders and whatnot that I've met throughout my life. So there's also that in terms of how Islam classifies what is and isn't evil and what we do and don't punish. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent. I hope that answers your question.
I mean, it makes no. I can see what you mean. I see what you're trying to say because I've seen you on other episodes as well. On several, I saw you with Apostate Prophet. I saw you, so I'm pretty familiar with your backstory, how your family disowned you after you became an apostate. So I've listened to quite almost a lot about you. So I'm pretty familiar with your personality and what you're trying to say. But I just wanted to pop in and ask you that because that just seems like a very powerful thing to kind of shift your consciousness away from is the dealing with hellfire and then, having existential nihilism maybe creep in. Do you fear that? Do you fear any type of nihilism or cynicism coming into your life?
I certainly did at the beginning, when I initially left Islam, because then you're sort of left with this big question of what the hell is the point of any of this? What it's quite, Derek, I'm sure you went through that as well when you left Christianity.
Yeah, well, when you're usually in what happens typically from my experience is the people who still believe it kind of pitch it to you like you have a choice. You either, like, they don't give us an option. We don't have an option. You either believe in nothing, in chaos, and you have to kill each other, or believe in the true God, or you're going to get punishment and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's not black or white for us like that. And I understand it might seem that way from within the perception of people in the worldview, but morality to us also, one can argue it's objective, but what they mean by that might differ. One might say it's subjective if you're coming from an atheistic worldview, and what they mean by that might be different. But ultimately, I used to fear hell big time. And now what helped me with the fear of hell was studying all the different worldviews in antiquity and looking into Zoroastrianism, looking into the Greek ideas of the afterlife and what is going to happen in Hades and these narratives, and realizing those are myths. And when you do like 8 out of 10 of them, are myths, and you get to the other ones where everyone's like, no, these aren't myths, this is true. You kind of go, well, hold on. We know these are stories that are told in antiquity, not by dummies, by brilliant people in the time in which they lived. We're trying to understand the world they lived in. And I just feel like oftentimes religion is outdated based on the research that we're doing. It doesn't mean it doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't mean it doesn't have deep meaning and existential value to them and personal, like people, I've had serious experiences as a Christian. And I'm not playing around. Like I really, really sincerely believed. And now I'm looking at it going, is there a natural explanation for why I thought these things, why I experienced these things? And does it really require a metaphysical being, a God, a spirit, or something to actually have those experiences when I see people have them all the time? I wanted to ask you, though, if it's okay. I have a super chat from someone in the chat, and they wanted to ask you a question. Would you be interested?
Ask me?
Yeah, they wanted to super chat a question for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. Constellation Pegasus, thank you, man, for making this fun too, and inviting our friend. If and this is just an if hypothetical, if Islam has textual contradictions, I know you probably don't believe it does, but if it did, do you think, or what would you think of that? Like, how would you deal with it if you said, okay, maybe there is textual variance or issues, like contradictions potentially in the Quran? Like, what would you personally do if that were true?
Well, that has the ethical dualism. That has the different type of Islamic logic where two things that are contradictory can be true at the same time. And then you take whichever one applies to the moment. So there's certain training upon it, which I'm trained in Hegelian logic and Aristotelian logic. And so I understand that the Greek form of logic is quite different than the Islamic logic, but that's like how the way we deal with it, especially as somebody who studies a lot of the hadith. You look at the logic and then you find out, okay, you can do this many different variations. You would take that and then apply it to whatever you can when you need to enact a certain wudu, depending on where you are. So if there's something in the Quran from the Meccan surahs and from the Medinian surahs, one being earlier, one being latter, then you would take the later one, that's the abrogation, but you would still have that sort of dualistic logic. You just need to figure out how that is going to apply to the certain context of your current situation. That may sound kind of technical, but there's others who can explain it, but there is that different, dualistic logic. So it's a different ethical code. It's a different aqidah. that might be the Salafi Wahhabi interpretation. I'm not sure how the Sufis or the Shia depict that, but that is the way in which I have learned so far to deal with that.
Interesting. I'm not even addressing. I'm just asking their question. So.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah. I appreciate you. Seriously, I'm making sure that none of these other ones are for you too. People are sympathetic. That's it. That's all that we have for you. And look, I really appreciate you coming on and being so kind to my guest and showing that like we're all human. We're all like, and we believe you're sincere and you really are trying to figure out what the truth is. And I hope that even if you think she's wrong and I'm wrong, you at least will consider, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but that we're sincere in trying to really understand things and we're really trying to figure it out. You might think,
I've seen a lot of your shows and I've seen you talk to Apostate Prophet. I've seen you all, and I understand that you as kafirs and you as apostates, it's the pressure from the Muslim community is intense because they're very passionate, so they protect their religion very deeply. And I understand their passion, but I can speak to you in a different way because I want to get at certain questions, and I wanted to hear what Infidel Noodle had to say and what you had to say. And if I'm attacking you, I can't get my answers.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything else, Noodle?
No, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and for engaging with us in such a way. It's quite, like you said, Muslims are very passionate about their religion, and so there can be a little bit of a barrier in terms of engaging openly and honestly in the way that we've done today. So just thank you so much for being so courteous and so lovely. And if you're ever interested, I'd love to have, a more elaborate discussion with you on my channel. So please definitely reach out if that's something, that you might want to do at some point.
Yeah, in the future, inshallah, we can do something like that. I think that would be very beneficial. You can find me on Instagram. You DM me. I was banned on Twitter, and I don't have Facebook, so it's like, or you can comment on my channel, or we can find a way where I can contact you or email you and stuff like that, and we can figure something out, inshallah. Because I'm very familiar with your story, and I kind of want to peck your mind and see. You test my mind, and I test your mind to kind of see where you are, because we have opposite shoes. So I think that'd be very beneficial for your community and as well for other niqabis and hijabis. So yeah, but all right, Infidel Noodle, I'll let you guys get back to your podcast. I just wanted to get in, and I kept spamming your chat like link. So forgive me for that.
I had to do it. You forced me to.
All right, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. See you later.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening. All right. That was awesome. We got a couple super chats, though. Heaven and hell don't become true just because you hope real hard for ideal justice. I mean, who doesn't want justice? Obviously. I think that there's potential reasons for the development of it. Initially, people having experience with people in post-mortem situations. So there's a psychological reason for saying someone exists after they die. Even if there's no evidence, they'd say, I experienced them. But the other idea is justice, like dealing with this. How come Joe Schmo was poor, had 6 kids, was a wonderful man, obeyed God's laws, and didn't get anything out of this life? And rich John up here in this castle with all these concubines and never struggled with nothing and treated Joe like crap and everybody else, just like the rich man and Lazarus in the Gospels. Someone's got to punish for the bad things, right? It's an interesting thing, and I agree with my friend here.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it, if there was some kind of ultimate justice? I think in a lot of ways that would put me at ease in a lot of senses. And like I said, I wish I could believe in something like that. It's just that, again, you don't choose your beliefs. And I, at the end of the day, just am not convinced as it currently stands.
Yeah, there's too many issues. If everyone found a way to go through kind of a universalism, if that made sense with the text in antiquity, I can't promise how long it would have taken me to get out of Christianity. I'd have probably still found what reason would I have to leave? Right? It's universal. We're all going to the right place in the end. He's just going to cook off the bad, which means just a little bit of time, purgatory or whatever you'd like to say, but we're all going to go to heaven. Right? And then there's so many interpretations about that. Brute Facts podcast. Go subscribe to my boy, Eddie. He's a Christian, But the dude has like a very balanced channel. He's the coolest guy in the world. He'll never tell you you must convert, okay? Like, but he wants to have these deep philosophical conversations, and he's big into philosophy. And he's wondering why there's only 164 likes. Something isn't adding up here.
Good question.
I know. What the heck, dude? That's a bigger question to ask than heaven and hell right now. I don't understand what's. Oh man. Our buddy's back, and thank you for the super chat. An atheist deals with the fear of hell just like a Christian would deal with the fear of Islamic hell, not care. Interesting. Well put. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I don't know. I don't think I'd say that I didn't care. There was certainly a long time where I did care. It's just that if once you don't believe in something anymore, it's like saying, you know, well, why aren't you scared of unicorns? Well, why would I? Why would I be scared of a unicorn? But no, I definitely cared for a long period of time. I think even not even just the Islamic hell, but like you want to, like you said, you know, once you realize that there are so many religions out there, and how slim the chances are that your particular, you know, belief that you were born into is the correct one, you do kind of question like, okay, well, what about, you know, the hell prescribed in these religions? Am I going to go there? So I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I don't care. How would you put that, Derek?
No, I guess at this point, it doesn't affect me. If that's what you mean by not care, I think that's what they mean. It doesn't affect me. It used to impact me. Like, and I relate to what our friend came on and said. Like, I think about death all the time, but I don't think about hell. I think about my kids and my wife, and like sometimes have this real deep thought about like, how am I going to die? What's the pain going to be like when I die? I believe, and this is my belief, if you will, is that before you were born, you remember that? That's what it'll be like. And that's kind of what I use as my analogy. It's like, I don't think we're going to be suffering. It's wishful thinking to think other than that. If there is something, there's nothing here for me that's clearly gave me the indication that that's the case. So I have no reason to think that. I have very good reason when you do a study of the geography in a lot of the places that these ideas of hell developed. Like, you don't get this hell developing in certain regions in history, but Dr. Price talks about Zoroastrianism, and I can't remember what the other religion was, but he talks about in the region, they had like lava pits coming out of the ground, and they thought down there is where the fire is in the earth. So when you die, if you're a bad, naughty boy or girl, like Santa Claus, he knows when you're naughty or nice, you're going to go down there where all this other stuff's coming out of the earth. And that might be the origin of fire, flame, down low in the earth, that kind of stuff. And you can see the development potentially taking place as to how something could evolve. Now it's not in the earth because we've drilled deep enough. No, it's in another realm. It's in a whole other dimension. And then who knows, if we travel dimensions one day, they're going to say, it's beyond the quantum. It'll be beyond your measurements. You can never measure it because it's not there unless we have evidence to see that it is. So hope was that too much?
No, I think that was a great answer. I think you put that really well.
I hope I did. I hope so. Thank you. Okay. You were wonderful. And you told me before we started the show, you were like, my manly voice. And I'm like, manly voice? What are you talking about? Like, you're tripping. No, you did really, really good. And I'm so thankful you stayed this long. Everybody give her a huge shout out and show her some love. I want to have her come back. Let's have group conversations. I can't tell you how awesome the conversations were with you and our Muslims that came on. I'm serious.
Yeah, they were great. I'd love to do more of that. I don't know. Whenever I put out, the word that I'm looking for people to talk to, I get responses from like the biggest weirdos, but no one nearly as nice and sweet as the people that we spoke with today. So yeah, it would be great to do that again.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And you tell us what you think in the chat. Seriously, everyone's like, amazing show. Clappity, clappity, clap, clap. Infidel little thanks. Seriously, it was someone called you a hottie. Oh
no.
Yeah, and she doesn't even have her mask off. Can you imagine? No, but seriously, I'm thankful you came on. You took the time we had to reschedule the other night. The live went, I didn't start it, but it was like 20 minutes in and people were messaging me. Some of my friends on Patreon were like, D, the live is on. Where are you? And I ran in here and I saw it and I was like, oh crap, she rescheduled. I didn't change the time. But we're here now.
Yeah, look, I'm really sorry, to Derek and to anyone who was like waiting for that stream. I had some kind of personal issues come up and then we had to reschedule. And then we had to reschedule again because I got ridiculously sick. But I'm here, we made it happen, and I hope that we get to make it happen again in the near future.
Same here. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are suffering with memory loss, cognitive dissonance, or any of that stuff, don't worry, take it from me. I'm going to remind you of something. We are Myth Vision. Thanks again, Noodle.
Thank you.
Let me get our intro going here.